Recording in progress.
The poly to the brand is Plantronics. Yeah, it's called a police stuff. Yeah.
Should have walked or you've got some exercise.
You're so out of breath.
I know, I'm out of breath just running from far. Yeah.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes. I hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Great.
Yeah, all right. Just say let it ride. We'll have to put a curtain. Yeah. I don't know how much time we have. Let us see.
Yeah, is this it?
Do you want the package?
You know, I was sitting here going, wait a minute. Okay, so some of this is
Right, she's totally. I mean, I'm sure you can.
Is this what we're doing?
Oh, I see.
Sorry, I set my notes down. That's what they were trying to. Although if there's anything interesting.
Hey Cheryl, can we talk to you and switch it one seat there? Because if you can see on the screen, you have a hate. How appropriate. We'll work that out. Iron out the next. Yeah, that works. Yeah.
All right, I think, are we ready to go? It's off.
I'll contact them. Okay. Thanks. Okay, bye.
You ready to go, Mr. Napa? Or do you have to step out?
Yeah, I'm gonna step out so you can get it going.
Okay. All right, folks, I will bring our meeting to order. We have a combination of Zoom and in person, so thanks for joining us. So this calls our regular meeting to order for June. With that, we will stand and pledge allegiance. Leave the flag outside.
I'll bring it in.
Okay.
Hey.
Just have it here at the back of the room.
Yeah, that's great. All right. No, that's fine. I'm not
Out of practice.
All right. Let's see. So we had a closed session and nothing to report. No reportable action during closed session. So this brings us back to open session and approval of the agenda. And Gabe, if I could, since Eli stepped out for a minute, the consent, number 7 on the consent has discussion decision regarding emergency intertie. I just want to make sure that that truly is a consent.
Again,
Number 7 on the consent says discussion decision, but in my talks with Eli and Jack, we had that as a consent. So I just want to make sure that the council is still okay having that as consent.
I did talk to Eli about this, Sam. I might pull it, but there's, I think, a little, so few people here.
Okay.
I was okay with it as a consent.
Okay.
You know?
All right. So at this point, the council doesn't have any substantive changes to the agenda. Any public comment regarding tonight's agenda, substantive change? Seeing none, bringing it back. We have
Accept the agenda.
we have a first. We have a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And Jack is an aye. Jack Tuttle is an aye. Okay, so we have our agenda is set. And just wanted to make sure that we had that all together. So the next thing is approval of the minutes. It looks like all of our minutes will be approved or discussed rather at the following meeting. So switch the tape here. So at this point, we will go to council reports and committee assignments. Mr. Tuttle, do you have anything to report on council or on committees or other activities?
Yes, I was part of the Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting on May 26th. Exciting news. They have completed the first California microgrid at the airport, and the grand opening is June 22nd. They also were talking about a handful of solar farms that they have under contract to build this year. Their goal is to import as much clean energy into our grid as possible. Unfortunately, due to some solar tariffs going on at the moment, it's affecting their timelines and the cost is going up. But as of last week, the president put a pause on those solar tariffs. So those projects should be back online for them and should get them installed by end of this year or early next year. A little bit about the Redwood Coast Authority is a great place for rebates, heat pumps, energy efficient items, and will help you buy your electric car or charging stations with rebates. And for more info, you can go to redwoodenergy.org. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kelly, do you have anything to report?
I do have a couple of things. Very quickly, the Humboldt County Convention and Visitors Bureau meeting on May 12th. There was a lot of discussion about Measure J, which subsequently passed. There was mention of the cruise ship that arrived in Eureka and that it had some excursions to the area, like Prairie Creek Blue Lake Casino, and some shuttles to Old Town Eureka. And there are 2 more cruise ships coming in September. And so I think it would be a good discussion to see where we're supposed to check that potentially. So I do think that it'd be better for the chamber to have a representative than a city council member. So I reached out to the chamber and they're going to volunteer someone. But most of the discussion was about, like, you know, marketing and web hits and getting more visitors. And I just think the Planning Commission meeting was the other thing I attended on 5/18. I just want to point out that the Planning Commission selected Richard Johnson to continue to chair the commission, and Aaron Hakenin will be the vice chair. Tom Hopkins was chosen to represent the commission on the city's trail committee, as you may already know, and Aaron Hakenin for the water advisory committee. Let's see, there were discussion about Jennifer's work on September Septic Awareness Month and how exciting and that will be. And future meetings, we're going to discuss, or they're going to discuss rainwater catchment, signage plans, vegetation management, the Tri Management Plan, incorporation into the general plan, and recommendations for the city's website. I bet you wish I had done, but I'm not. I've got 2 more. So the Water Advisory Committee. June 9th, we reconvened the Water Advisory Committee on June 9th, had a good discussion about the charter of the committee, the actions taken by the city to source, preserve, and distribute water. We selected a new chair, which was me. And future topics, we're going to talk about water-related grants, contractor report outs. We're going to talk about what kind of reporting is needed on water and water conservation. Rainwater catchment, emergency response, and water rates. So we have quite a list of topics. The next meeting, however, will not be until about early. And then last but not least, I did attend part of the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District meeting, and it was the part where they talked about the draft MOU, Kennyville CSD, and Bay. And they are going to look at the MOU is going to cover a mainline extension of basically wheel water, which is a way of saying just move water from one place to the next via MCSD's water system. So MCSD is going to review that MOU on July 9th, and then Humboldt Bay is going to maybe review and adopt on July 15th. So that's pretty good to get that launched. That's it.
Any questions for Cheryl? And then real quick on a kind of a Zoom basis, is there any way we can see all the people or just the speaker? How's that working for?
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Just because, I mean, I see that there are 12, 13 participants, but it'd be nice to see their faces too, in case anyone's trying to get my attention.
Yeah, let me see that.
Thank you.
This what it's showing is everyone that has their video on.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. So it's not showing. Okay, fair enough. So folks on the Zoom, just make sure you either use the hand raising or, just somehow get attention so that we make sure that you're able to participate as well as we kind of head into this new world. So yeah, thanks for bringing that also, in case anyone. Yeah.
And Dave Grover is joining the meeting, so just so we're all.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Dave. Dave, do you have any reports for the council? We're doing council reports.
No.
Okay.
No reports for me this month.
Okay, Jack.
I have just some brief ones. I'm going to come back some more HCOG information. I did bring the sheet with me, so I'm not going to report out this time, but I will get something for next time. And also, we did move the Trails Committee meeting. It was supposed to be in July to August, since nobody will be here until I come to it. So we'll just so people know we'll report September.
Okay, thank you. My two committees that I'm on, either they didn't meet or I was on vacation, so I don't have anything to report on HTA or REDEC. But Cheryl and Eli and I met with the Trinidad Rancheria this morning and just heard from them some of the various projects that they're working on and just sort of getting that conversation started again. So it was nice to be back in communication with the Rancheria and look forward to more in the future. Do you have anything to add, Cheryl?
No, I think it was a good meeting. I don't think there was anything, products that were new. It was more about things that were already in the works and
Okay, so moving on then to staff reports. Eli.
Okay. Can you hear me okay with the microphone?
I can. Can the folks in Zoom hear?
Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so the city manager's report, which is included in the packet, I mentioned first of all about the stormwater project, which is progressing. They're currently working on Van Wyck Street, and the paving will be happening in beginning July 5th, after July 4th. And the project should be done by July 12th, so a week after that Tuesday. Then the Verizon cell service, I mentioned in there that the cell tower that's on Trinidad Head has been turned off, that we are functioning off of 2 cell towers for Verizon. One is off of Quarry Road and one is in West Haven. So there are some pockets of poor cell service that have been reported to the city. And any Verizon customers in the greater Trinidad area are encouraged to contact the city and report any change in reception so it can assist us in reaching out to Verizon and to make them aware of that. And then the Trinidad Head cell site will be decommissioned once the birding season is over. And then summer solstice, the chamber is going to have their Taste of Trinidad, and it's going to happen on summer solstice, which will be June 21st. It'll be in Saunders Park, and they have a number of vendors, and they also have music provided by a local group called Fred and Wilma. So, and there will be food, wine, and beer provided by what I call North County vendors, and the charge is $20. In the community yard sale, Jennifer from our staff had put that together. It was successful despite the rain that day. So 23 residents from and 6 from West Haven participated in the yard sale, and the rain had held off until about 12:30. So I wanted to thank Jennifer and also Ross from Public Works, who helped with putting up signs and checking up on the residents who had the yard sale going on. Then I mentioned that I had attended the CIRA meeting in Sacramento. That was 45 cities from the JPA that we're a part of. So 6 of the 7 Humboldt cities, everyone but Rio Del, is a member of CIRA also. And then about water, because people asked about water and want an update. So what I have written here, first of all, I mentioned that the Water Advisory Committee had met and addressed a number of issues which Cheryl had mentioned. The city this past month experienced a water loss of over 40%, which is the 2nd month in a row. And on July 6th, the California Department of Water Resources, through California Rural Water Association, will be sending a leak detection specialist who's going to test about 2,000 feet of water service lines for leaks. And then we'll have, there's no charge to the city, and they are going to be doing this in the future again, but at least this is the first one that they're going to be doing at no charge. Also included in our packets under the consent calendar are scopes of work which will be prepared by GHD and SHN regarding the 2 large grants that we received recently dealing with water, for both the emergency intertide and new water storage tanks and water pipeline replacement. As far as the water plant, we're on track to start a conversion from Coleman Engineering staff to city staff. So some of our staff members have been trained recently with Coleman Engineering, and this will all be happening between July and August. And the other thing is Coleman Engineering has used their expertise to make improvements to the operation of the plant. Finished water now shows a 25% reduction in NTUs, which are suspended particles in the water. So 25% reduction. Also, increased run times at the plant have resulted in more frequent tank turnover, leading to a more constant disinfection throughout the system, and the use of 5 to 10% less chlorine. So those are both good improvements to the plant. And then the other part of it is encouraging all residents and water customers to conserve on a regular basis. The state is recommending water conservation throughout the state. So we just want to be ready for that dry season. So the more we conserve, the better. That's all I have. I'll entertain any questions.
Questions for Eli? Thank you very much for that report. And at this point, we will move on to items from the floor. At this time, members of the public may comment on items not appearing on the agenda. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments should be directed to the council as a whole and not to individual council members or staff. Council and staff responses will be minimal for non-agenda. Mr. Morgan.
Hey, nice to be back in this room. You guys all been here. It's flawless. Good job, you guys. This is about, I guess you guys had a meeting. We still haven't heard anything from the lawyer. I have spoken with Eli about some of this. So I guess, I'm sorry, I thought we were going to be settled with this last week and all done. So we were led to believe what we were out before. You guys have probably got this email already, but I want to file with the city. June 8th, Honorable City Council, City of Trinidad. I'm not sure which is dumber. Are we building trust with our city manager, or the city continuously trusting specious direction and apparently authorizing more court action from our city attorneys? Our city manager continuously reassures us the city is done, and like us, wanted to settle our court actions at our recently scheduled settlement conference and do better next time. The city, apparently ignoring common sense, continues to trust specious city attorney directions, and according to our city manager, has authorized new court actions. These new court actions have not led to settlement. They are prolonging the city's 2-year non-settlement of this case. The new court actions have added thousands of dollars in attorney fees to tens of thousands that the city has already spent on us. For what? More discord and distrust. Unfortunately, each step forward in building trust with the city is being continuously eroded by our attorneys. Fortunately, the buck stops with you. Much like our beach trail steps, our relationship will always need maintenance. We need your help to finish the settlement and fix the damage from the storm. Sorry, very emotional. So on the day we were supposed to receive this, which is the settlement document finally from the attorney, we received this, which I gave you guys a copy of so you see what I have to go through. So we were supposed to get this. We still haven't got this in the mail yet. It hasn't been served correctly to us. I had to go in and get it on Tuesday, a week ago, from the attorneys. I asked for calls. They haven't called us or anything. So you're all caught up. We're looking forward. We rescheduled for the 23rd. We're still looking forward to finishing this up. Much like we did the first case, which I guess was Ladwood there, and you were there, Gabe was there, and Zed.
Any other items from the floor? Looks like Paula Levine has her hand up, so please provide your item from the floor.
Will I have an opportunity to comment on Eli's report?
This is items from the floor. So this is a section where folks are talking about items not found on the agenda.
Okay, so I will be able to comment on it later.
You know what? I forgot to ask folks for questions. So I'm getting used to this new world. So why don't you go ahead and ask your questions of Eli at this point?
Okay. So Trinidad, it's my understanding from a speed reading of your report that we've obtained $5,079,000 plus grant. And my question is, how much of that money is for the tank and how much for fixing leaks?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact distribution between that. And at the same time, our engineers are preparing the scope of work, and they'll also include in there the estimated cost of each. So that hasn't been broken down exactly. So yeah, as far as how much is for one, how much the other, I don't know exactly for sure, but we can check with our engineers and find out when they can get that information to us.
So when you write the grant, it's not specified, it's just lumped together and to be determined after you get the money. Is that how it works?
Well, they estimated, but it was like a rough estimate. So I don't have the exact numbers. I'll check with them and see if they have some better numbers. But yeah, they estimated what a similar tank would have cost. And of course, when we go out there, who knows as far as the current market and inflation and the delivery of items as far as shipping and so on. So that could all change whatever, an existing plant would look, an existing tank would look like right now.
Could you give me a ballpark estimate?
Again, I want to either ask the engineer or try to have that document in front of me. So I don't have it in front of me to tell you if it's like 2 million or what, but probably it's somewhere between the $2 to $3 million range.
And
Okay.
We have a $5 million grant and a $2 million grant that were both approved for water activities, Paula. So just remember, it's actually somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million, and it's earmarked for fixing leaks and building tanks, right?
Yeah.
So think about you mentioned 5,700,000 roughly. And so really think more on the $7 million mark.
Yeah, this part is for the intertie, the emergency intertie.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment about why I'm asking this question. I don't think I'm out of time yet. the way the report was written, it says the steel tank is going to replace one of our tanks. And it's my understanding that the tank that is theoretically going to be replaced is not leaking. So we're talking about millions of dollars for seemingly marginal gain. And I'm bringing that up because this is all tied into, oh God, I don't know. There was so much hullabaloo about the cost of going one way or the other last year as far as improving our water system. And apparently, whatever way we chose to go would be through grants. I just want to remind the council and the public that if you had chosen otherwise, we probably would not have needed a tank. And we're talking about millions of dollars here. We probably would not need a tier 3 employee. And as far as the millions of dollars for the emergency intertie, the other choice
So Paul, I'm gonna ask you to either talk about the staff report or ask to pull one of the consent agenda items for discussion, because you're talking about items that are in the consent agenda. And so either focus on Eli's staff report or make a request to pull one of the consent agenda items, which is the, which one is it?
Number 6, the water.
6 and 7, yeah.
When you say pull it, what does that mean?
To add that to a discussion item, because right now we're discussing items that are on the agenda, and that's not what this is for, right? So if either we're going to discuss items on the agenda as a full public meeting, or we're going to focus your comments on Eli's staff, the city manager staff report. And in his staff report, he does not talk about items number 6 and 7. We're going to vote on the consent as one vote, approving or not approving all of the items at once.
Okay, so are you saying that I can speak about the consent agenda later on when you call for public comments on the consent agenda?
Yes, you can ask, and then the council will decide whether or not we're going to pull that for discussion. And then there's also one opportunity for public comment on the consent.
Okay, I would like there to be a discussion on number 6 on the consent agenda, the water storage and pipeline.
When we get to the consent agenda, I'll seek your input. And so if you could, in the time remaining here, if you could kind of organize your thoughts about what you're asking the council to do regarding those agenda items.
I will do that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for letting me continue to try to keep the meeting going, following Robert's rules and Brown Act and everything else. So at this point, are there any other questions or comments for Eli's staff report from the general public? All right, bringing it back, items from the floor. So I just want to make sure that we complete this process, this portion of the evening. Are there any items from the floor? Again, items to be discussed that are not on the agenda. I see none. Okay, so that closes items from the floor. Now to the consent agenda. I just want to for consistency, always read this little preamble here. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine by the city council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion for any of these items. If discussion is requested by any council member, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. A single opportunity for public comment on the consent is available. That is what we'll do now. So Paula, this is your time to comment on the consent. And if the council wishes to pull these items for further discussion, we can do so. So at this point, what is your public comment on the consent agenda?
Okay, well, you'll have to bear with me. I don't know if you've noticed, I tend to have get anxious when I talk in public. It's much better when I write something.
I just wanted to comment, Paula. So in other words, the consent agenda, the council will vote on the whole package unless something is pulled. So in other words, if you're interested in talking about number 6 or number 7, then ask the council if they will pull that for discussion. Then
Yes.
they can put on the rest of it and then come back to that item.
I'm interested in both number 6 and number 7.
Okay, council, do you wish to pull 6 and or 7 for further discussion?
I guess my initial thought was could potentially discuss some of these items at the water advisory committee, but I'm going to have a look at it real quick.
I have no problem with pulling the items and going for discussions. I would be willing to come out of that.
Mr. Tuttle, Mr. Grover?
Yeah, I'm fine with pulling that. I didn't know if, I mean, if there was a different decision being made or if there was just a point being made that was, not, like, I didn't know if there was going to be any option or availability for a different action to be taken by pulling it. Because I don't have it in front of me right now.
Yeah, I'm fine pulling it if we need to.
Okay, I am going to pull, and give me a second too to get to the recommended action and whatnot.
I also want to just add that you remind everybody that we have 3 minutes during this time for people to discuss things. So I was also considering moving the number 7 over because I thought it might be nice for people to know more about what that was about. So I think that is a good time.
So I hear a motion to pull number 7 and number 6, Jeff? What's your
Well,
motion?
I think Paula requested number 6, and I would be willing to allow that. And she also said 7. I thought 7 might be a good one, just so people understand what the this intertie agreement's about. So
Okay.
yeah, I think you like a summary of it that will take only a few minutes.
Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a first from West, a second from Grover. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so we will pull items 6 and 7 from the consent and move them to the first 2 discussion items in the next section. So we'll make a change and pull those 2. Any other public comment regarding the remaining items 1 through 5 on the consent agenda? Not seeing any little hands on the screen. All right, do we have a motion for the consent?
I'll move to accept the consent agenda without 6 and 7.
Okay,
Second that.
first and second on the consent, 1 through 5. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, passes unanimously. So that concludes the consent agenda, and we will move into now the discussion action section of the evening. Our first item being authorize city manager to negotiate and sign scopes of work with consultants, GHD and SHN for the water storage tank and pipeline replacement grant. Eli, if you are able to, can you give us a introduction to this? I know it's a little short notice, but if you don't mind doing that, that'd be great.
First of all, I'm not sure if Becky Price Hall is on. If she is, then she can also weigh in. But I'm not able to see if she's on there.
She is, yep.
Yeah, Becky, if you want to take a stab at this, this, and I can help with it also. But basically, here we're looking for the scope of work in this item. And matter of fact, both of these items. So that's the key focus is the fact that we're doing the scope of work. And of course, the scope of work will help determine probably a lot of questions that Paul is asking. And then the other question, yes, I'll just turn it over to you, Becky, and then I can fill in if
okay.
needed.
All right. So I think part of the question was, well, I don't know if, oops, I have my phone on also, and make that be quiet. Sorry. There we go. General introduction to the project, or specifically talking about the budget.
Yeah, I recommend you turn your camera off just so that it seems like you're having internet limitations. So if you don't mind, not your foot on our screen.
Okay. So my question was, would you like a general overview of the project, or just speak to the budget?
Both, please. Very general overview, and then how the budget breaks down.
Okay. So this particular project is
Becky, we are not hearing you.
funded by the Department of Water Resources. And it's through this program.
Becky, we are only picking up less than 10% of what you're saying. Is there a way you can just call in?
If I can, is this better? Is this better?
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
That sounds better. Or not.
Can you hear me now?
It's not on our, it's her.
Yeah. Bear with us, folks.
Okay, let's try this. I'm sorry. Is this better?
It does sound better.
Okay. Okay, I'm now on my phone. So this project is funded by the Department of Water Resources, and it's through the Small Community Drought Relief Program. And it's specifically to assist us with reducing, improving water resiliency. So the two pieces that the city proposed were replacing one tank with a steel tank that is about twice the capacity. So it's improving the quantity of water storage that we have. It also, the two tanks are old and redwood, and so they're at the end of their life. So a steel tank would improve or reduce the vulnerability of the tanks to a catastrophic leak. So that's one part of the project. The other part is replacing the old water line, the old asbestos concrete water lines, and we decided that starting with the largest dimension pipes that are going from the water plant up to the tank would be a good way, since we didn't have specific areas that were identified as leaky. We just thought starting with the old pipes. So that's one segment. The other segment is on Edwards, which we've started that with the stormwater project because of the opportunity. So it's water line replacement and the tank. And the budget is, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the budget is broken down in a way that's hard for me to tell you exactly what amount total is for the tanks, but I can tell you that the planning aspects are for all parts of the project. So that includes the design, the environmental documentation, which would be the CEQA, and permits. And that's one figure. It comes out to about $650,000 to do all the planning for the project. The construction, the part that's specific to the tank is just over $1 million for the construction of the tank. It's about $2.25 million for the part of the water line that's on West Haven Drive between the water treatment plant and the tank, part of which is a double line because currently some of the customers that are in that section between the tank and the water plant have to take their water out of that tank supply line, which is a little bit higher chlorinated, so that it can reach the far ends of the city's water system. So it provides another supply line that's just for distribution to customers as opposed to a dual purpose. So it just improves the operation of the plant. And the third piece is the Edwards Street water line, which will replace the undersized water line on Edwards, and it will also replace the failed water line on Van Wyck that's currently served by a temporary water line that's above ground. So that temporary water line would no longer be needed. And that's kind of the basics of the budget. There's, some project administration, and there's what's called construction administration, which is the engineers that are on site during construction and doing inspections. So I'll leave it there, and then if there's questions, hopefully I can answer them.
Thank you very much, Becky, for sort of, like I said, a last minute coverage of that. That really helped. Any questions from the council for Becky regarding this item to authorize city manager to negotiate sign a scope of work? All right, any public comment regarding this, what this project is for and what we're asking the city to do? Oh, this is your chance.
My cat here. Okay, it's $1 million for the construction of the tank, $650 for planning. Then there's the cost possibly of the land to place the tank, the cost of hiring PWA to find the land to place the tank.
Those are not included.
Yeah.
Those are not included. The cost of land is not included in this grant, nor is PW.
I understand. I'm adding up all the costs for this tank. And I just want to accentuate that while one of the redwood tanks are old, it's also old growth redwood. It's in as good a shape or better shape than the newer tank. But the point being is that neither tank is leaking. So in all the discussions of all the things that the city council could have done, decisions made in the past of what way to go, now we're at a point of a tank and replacing pipes. Replacing pipes seems a huge priority as far as the water loss involved in the leaking pipes. I just want to accentuate that when you add up all the costs of what's involved in the decisions that the council has made to date in the past year, a tank, replacing a tank that's not leaking, we're getting 150,000 extra gallons of
Paul,
water.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up. Your time is up. So I'm going to ask you to make a statement that urges the council to go one way or the other, but really we're talking 20, 30 seconds. We need to move on.
I think the council needs to reevaluate its decision to develop the upper Luffenholz, which is not on this agenda, but the fact that this plan is not even going to start until next summer and be completed 2 years out. This is for a tank, and it's going to be $1.5 million, $2 million. I think the council needs to reevaluate its decision and decide to not go with this tank.
Thank you for your comment. I'm calling, and that's, you've run out of time. So thank you for your comment. Is there any other public comment regarding item number 6, to authorize city manager to negotiate sign of scope works? It looks like, Becky, is your hand back up?
I just wanted to make a clarification that the tank that's being funded by this is to replace a storage tank of finished water that's at the current tank site. So there's no additional property needed for this project. The tanks that are up the Luffenholz Creek are not, that's a different project. So I just wanted to clarify which tank idea we're talking about.
Thank you very much. Any other comments regarding this agenda or questions? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for recommended action or for a motion.
I'll move that we authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign scopes of work with the consultants, GHD and SHN for the water storage tank and pipeline replacement project grant.
Second.
First from West, second from Grover. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nope, everybody voted in favor, so it passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Moving on to number 7, discussion decision regarding Trinidad West Haven Emergency Intertie Agreement and Grant. Eli, is this also a Becky introduction?
Yeah, I'll start off with it and then turn it over to Becky. But just to give a general idea of the scope of this, is this is creating redundancy in our system and assist our neighboring system. So it's called an emergency intertie, and it will be utilized only in those situations when either the City of Trinidad's water system or the West Haven Community Services District, their water system has a failure. And then we could tap into the other cities or the other districts' water. And this would be like probably when there is a peak period during August, September, October. The grant is a multi-benefit drought relief program grant. And that's why it's also part of that Small Communities Drought Relief Program. And it's intended to assist in providing this redundancy. They really like this idea of having the two water systems working together. So I'll turn it over to Becky and she can elaborate a little bit on this or at least cover whatever I might have not mentioned.
So that was the basics of that, of what this grant is for. I'm trying to think if there's anything to add. So what will be involved initially is to complete an agreement with West Haven that covers both completing the construction part of the project, but it also covers the operation and maintenance of this intertie pipeline and into the future, just so that everything is understood between the parties, who will maintain, who pays the cost. And it's generally going to be shared maintenance costs. And West Haven Community Services District would be essentially the lead on the project, and the city would be in an advisory and sort of partner role. So in this consent or in this agenda item, what we're asking or recommending is that the council authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign the scopes of services for GHD, the city engineer, and SHN, the city planner, to be in that advisory role throughout the project. And let's see if there's anything else to mention. I think it's worth pointing out that the two parties have agreed on all the basics, and I'm sorry that we don't have the draft agreement. It's there's a lot of edits that we're making to an agreement. We're using an agreement from Lake County for an emergency intertie, and so there's a lot of edits to be made, and we weren't able to get a clean copy. So hopefully we'll have that for the next council meeting. And so if there's any other areas that you would like me to describe in more detail, please let me know.
And if I could just add, because I've been in these discussions as well with the two districts and with the engineers and whatnot, that as you mentioned, this is not a new idea that Trinidad has come up with. We're using existing agreements between other communities because that's a trend that is happening around the state. So that's a well sort of vetted effort, is to bring these emergency interties into play. And one of the sort of the unexpected benefits from my thought anyway is that once this intertie exists between the two cities' water sources, there also will be fire hydrants along that intertie, which gives us the added benefit of fire safety in the West Haven area, West Haven and Trinidad area. So that's an added benefit that this project is coming with. So any questions from the council regarding the emergency intertie?
I think it's a good idea. I wanted to Richard Johnson. this forward a few times as well. So let's do that a little bit.
Other questions, comments from the council? All right, public comment for this item to basically authorize the city manager to start working on the intertie agreement, emergency intertie agreement. Any comments? Paul, is your hand still up? Are you forming your thoughts? Have you formed your thoughts? You have 3 minutes.
So this, accepting this is just authorizing Eli to work on the agreement?
Yep.
Okay. No, obviously, the definition of emergency needs to be worked on, but no, I don't have anything to say about it. I suppose that you will go ahead and accept it.
Any other public questions or comments regarding this agenda? All right, bringing it back to council. Do we have a motion regarding item number 7?
I'll move to accept the Trinidad West Haven Emergency Intertie Agreement grant.
Second that.
Authorizing the city manager at this point.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
authorize the city manager to accept the Trinidad West Haven Emergency Intertie Agreement grant.
Now I'll second it. Yeah.
And Grover is second. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you for that discussion. Moving on to now
If we could pause for a moment, I just wanted to ask Becky. Becky, do we need to do the portion regarding the scope of services for GHD and SHM too?
Yes, that would be, we would like, if it's pleasing the council, we would like authorization for Eli to negotiate and approve the scopes of services for GHD and SHN. And this would be according to the scope of work in the project. So it's not looking to do anything outside of what has already been approved by the council.
I will do this.
Yeah,
let's
start
I'm
over.
going to authorize the city manager to negotiate and approve the GHD scope of services for the grant support and not to exceed 54,000, and authorize the city manager to negotiate and approve the SHN scope of services for the MBTRP grant support not to exceed $6,000.
Second that.
All right, first and second, thank you for clarifying that. Sorry, Gabe, I owe you a donut for having to do that twice. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 1, discussion decision regarding second reading of ordinance 2022-02, organics reduction and recycling ordinance. So for those of you looking at the packet, page 43 of 96. Eli, do you want to take this one and give us a preamble?
Sure. So this was brought forward at the last meeting, and we're bringing it again now for the second reading. This is regarding organics reduction and recycling ordinance. As was mentioned previously, the city of Trinidad has been able to get a 5-year waiver from some of the things that need to be done for this purpose. This is to help reduce the waste that ends up in the stream, in the trash stream. And as a result, the county is currently looking on a global scale, meaning global in the sense of the whole county. So the whole county is working with Edgar and Associates, and it was mentioned just recently in the media that they're looking for a site to build a composting center that would serve the whole county. So this goes along with this. Like I said, we do have a 5-year waiver, but there are still certain requirements that will help redirect food waste. And if there's any voluntary, efforts by local businesses and residents to help with composting and also redirecting the food waste, which ends up creating methane in the landfills, and as a result contributes to global warming. So this is the purpose of this particular ordinance, is to comply with SB 1383, which was approved by the state legislature. So I'll entertain any questions or comments that anyone has.
And there were no substantive changes required or requested rather from the first reading. So this is in essence the exact same that we had on March 24th.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure that's clear. Any further questions, comments on this ordinance from the council? Any public comment on organics reduction ordinance?
A quick question.
Yep.
You mentioned that Murphy's might be involved. Is there any other businesses came up?
Yeah, that's the only one that would be involved during this cycle, would be Murphy's. Because right, yeah. The other, for some reason, the verbiage in there indicates restaurants with over 250 seating. I haven't personally been in a restaurant that large, but so yeah, that's why those aren't included. And in the case of Murphy's, because they are over 10,000 square feet. But yeah, being a small community, that's correct.
And the school doesn't, I'm just thinking the kids, there's 180 kids at the school, and if they all came and ate lunch, the staff, they're getting close, but the school is exempt from this?
Well, it wasn't included in this, but after the 5 years, it would kick in.
Okay.
But the other part of it is once they get the composting center set up in the county, it would be a great thing if we can, between residents and businesses and the school, convert the food waste.
Okay.
And at the same time, people can even do their own composting in their backyard, and it's good for fertilizer.
Yeah. All right. So any other public comment on this item? Okay. So bringing it back to council, do we have a motion regarding the second reading of ordinance 2202? Someone's got to take it from Jack. He's going to get power.
I'll do it again. We're going to waive, recommending us to waive the full reading and adopt the second reading of ordinance 2022-02 by title only, establishing the organics reduction and recycling ordinance.
Second.
First by Wes, second by Kelly. Sorry, David, you missed out on that one. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Item number 2, discussion decision regarding first reading of ordinance 2203, tourist occupancy tax ordinance amendment. As I traditionally do, I will recuse myself from this and ask the Mayor Pro Tem to take over.
Okay, thank you. So we're, as he said, it's the tourist occupancy tax ordinance amendment, and I think Eli has the information for this. I'll let him explain what we're doing.
Right. Okay. Well, we are modifying the existing ordinance that we have regarding the TOT, and we had the law firm of Mitchell Law Firm work on this, and Karen Roebuck is with us on the Zoom call, so I will turn it over to her since she was able to put this together.
Thank you, Mr. Naffa. The council may recall that in April, it directed staff to review, consider, and propose amendments to the tourist occupancy tax. And so that is what we have done. This would, if approved, this would be a measure to go to the voters. And it is a general tax, which would mean that it is the revenues are placed into the general fund and are available for expenditure for any and all governmental purposes. The funds are not devoted to any specific purpose. it would need to be approved by a majority of the voters. It would raise the tourist occupancy tax rate from the current 8% to 12%. Although the effective date of the ordinance itself would be prior to that, we are recommending an operative date for that 12% of April 2023, April 1st, 2023. This is to give the operators sufficient time to be able to adjust to a new tax rate, and having it on the first of a new quarter would allow them to report and remit on a quarterly basis with the new rate. The 8% would continue through March 31st of 2023. There are some other recommended changes to the ordinance in addition to the tax rate increase. Some of the definitions are updated, most notably to become a little more contemporary. We now define an online travel company and then make reference to both a booking and managing agent in terms of the operator, just to become a little more contemporary with how a lot of reservations are made. There are other, I don't know if anybody wants to go through it line by line. There are other modifications to make some changes to the appeals process, the record keeping, clarifying the refund process, removal of criminal penalties for the violation of the ordinance. I would like to note a couple things. One is that one of the recommendations for today is to introduce on first reading by title only and submit to the voters. Cities do apparently do this a little differently, and not every city that's going to be submitting a measure to the voters will do an introduction and first reading. However, we felt procedurally that was the best way to go, but there won't be a second reading. What would essentially be happen is it would be voted on by the voters. If the resolution is adopted by the council, then the election would be consolidated with the statewide election in November, and it would be to the voters. Because this is a general tax, it is simply a majority vote by the voters that is needed. I would like to point out, unfortunately, there are 3 typographical errors, and in the resolution on section 2, which is on the second page of the resolution, there's a transposition of numbers in the government code section that is cited in section 2, and it should be 53724. And then in the ordinance itself, and I think you have in the packet a copy of the ordinance, and then the ordinance is Exhibit A to the resolution. In section 1, approval of tax rate increase, it reads the qualified votes of the city of Trinidad, and that should read the qualified voters of the city of Trinidad. And then in section 5 of the ordinance, compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, there's an errant lowercase e that should be stricken. So my recommendation is that if any council member is going to make a motion in regards to the resolution and the ordinance, to take into account those typographical errors that need to occur. Does the council have any questions?
Any questions by anyone on the council? No, looks like we haven't any questions. Eli, do you have anything you wanted to add to this?
Oh, no, Karen covered it very well. Now, we do have the 2 agenda items here, where this one is the first reading of the ordinance, but like she mentioned, there's no necessary second reading since it is going to the voters. So we could adopt it. And then the other one is the resolution calling for the election to increase the TOT from 8 to 12.
We'll need to discuss that.
Yeah, so we'll do that next.
Okay, so right now we're just looking at the first reading. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. Gosh, look, I was going to do that next. Go ahead.
I have a question. You can just questions and comments. I think it's still the same. All right. So this for the attorney under 320, 120, just below refunds. I don't have page numbers on here, so I can't help you. Some pages in at the bottom.
I believe it's page 88.
Are you ready?
Go ahead.
So I'm just a little confused. It seems like the tourist is on the line and the operator is on the line in the same circumstance. And maybe I just need clarification. So on the second sentence, any such tax collected by an operator which has not been paid to the city shall be deemed a debt owed by the tourist to the city. So let's say, it seems like you're saying that even though the tourist has paid me as an operator, they're still liable. That's how I read that. And then in the next sentence, any such tax collected by an operator which has not been paid to the city shall be deemed a debt owed by the operator to the city. So it's like, are you keeping the tourist online liability and putting the operator, which it seems like if the tourist gives me money and I'm supposed to give to the city, sure, I would be liable, but their liability would seem to end. Did I just read it wrong, or what's the thought?
And Mayor Pro Tem West, would you like me to address that?
Yes, please.
Thank you. This language is continues from the ordinance as it exists. And yes, we do believe that it, the meaning and the intent of this portion of the ordinance is that any tax collected by an operator which has not been paid to the city is deemed a debt owed by the tourist to the city, and any tax collected by an operator which has not been paid to the city shall be deemed a debt owed by the operator to the city. So it is a debt either by the tourist or the operator, and we would just simply hope that all parties do pay as appropriately. However, if not, then we would address how that would go about being collected.
So I would recommend to strike that second sentence. Where this really agrees it.
Did you hear that comment?
I'm sorry, was there a question to me? And I apologize.
Yeah, question. Right.
Yeah, so my question was, we just strike that second sentence that says, any such tax collected by an operator which has not been paid to the city shall be deemed a debt by the tourist to the city. It doesn't seem to make sense to if the operator's collected the tax, the tourist then doesn't know it's money. It's the operator. So I would probably just strike that. I was asking
It's basically saying somebody has to collect the tax. If you don't collect it as the operator, you're going to pay it yourself. Is the way I interpret it. So that's why operators collect taxes, so that they don't have to pay it themselves.
We need more clarification. Okay.
so
Yeah. Do you want to go back over that, or are you clear about what? I mean, I'm the same way. I'm not quite sure I'm clear about what it says, but
You're asking as far as Karen going over.
I'm sorry, is the council, I'm having a little trouble hearing. Are you wanting me to readdress this? or is it appropriate at this time for me to do so?
The suggestion was that the second sentence be removed if you felt that that would work. The one that's referring to the tourists.
So it's my recommendation that the concept is that both the tourist and the operator shall be jointly and severally liable for the tax until collected. And so the point is to have somebody on the hook for the tax. So we would recommend that remain in.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the council about this, or excuse me, or from the public? I've already in the council. Any other public comment on this item? I don't see anything, so I'm going to bring it back to the council. No, we have.
Did you have another comment, Cheryl, or was that it?
No, the only other thing, my comment was a little more general. It does look like we need to look at some of the wording before, but mine was more about the increase from 8 to 12%, not so much the ordinance itself. And it was just that, I was thinking the only reason not to increase it from 8 to 12 is because right now we have economic shrinkage and so economic contraction. So there's high inflation and people are very fast. However, I think that 12% would align us with what the county is doing overall. It would also kind of bring us back to where we started when we had increased the tax without taking it. So it gets us kind of back on parity. So I just wanted to point out that I am sensitive to the fact that there is a challenge with that right now.
And remember, this is a first reading of this ordinance, but the next thing it does is still to keep that it's going to be voted on. So beyond this, it would be it'll go to the election for the TOTs, which we'll be discussing in the next item. So, okay, so
this is our last chance to make any edits.
this is a change we've done, and so we have a number of changes. But I think we've if there's nothing else, what we'll need is a motion in order to move on. So, is there anyone willing to make a motion? And please remember that they want to have us take account of the edits that were taking place. Like there are a number of edits still to be clear. We have a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we waive the second reading and that we make the proper textual fixes. There was grammatical errors or something with the text, and that we accept that. And at that point.
So we're looking at accepting the first. You say the first reading of this. I didn't quite clear. I just want to make sure that were you clear on that, Kate?
Yes, waiving the full first reading,
okay.
Waiving and making the necessary grammatical changes that she had mentioned, the typos.
Great.
I should add that to it.
Okay, thank you. So we have a first and a second. So, Kate, did you get everything okay? Got it. Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, it passes. And we're going to move on to the next item that's tied in is the discussion decision regarding Resolution 2022-10, calling for an election to increase the tourist occupancy tax rate from 8 to 12%. What have you got for us on this?
Yeah, well, I'm going to turn it over to Karen again. She prepared this. This is regarding the general election that will be in the fall, in November. So I'll turn it over to Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Naffa. What the resolution does is submits ordinance number 22-03 to the voters at the November 8th election, requests the election on the ordinance be consolidated with the statewide general election. It sets dates for and against the proposed tax measure. It sets dates for submission of rebuttal arguments, authorizes the mayor pro tem to submit a written argument in favor of the measure on behalf of the council, requests the city attorney prepare an impartial analysis of the measure, and agrees to reimburse the county for the costs of conducting the election on the measure. I would also recommend that that the council, if a motion is made, do a roll call vote. 2/3 vote of the council is required when submitting this tax measure to the voters. So I would ask perhaps the city clerk to confirm if 2/3 of the vote was on the first reading of the an adoption of the ordinance. And I would suggest recommend a roll call vote if the motion is made for this resolution.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is going to come back to the council for any questions you have or comments. So any council member have something you'd like to ask? Oh yeah, don't see it. How about, is there any public comment on this? All right. I see no public comments, so it comes back to somebody wishing to make a motion.
Try to get the city council, the clerk to confirm first about the last one.
Yeah, so I believe what Ms. Roebuck requested was that we do a confirm the roll call vote. Is that right? For the last agenda item for the ordinance?
If you could, please.
Yeah, okay. So I can confirm, unless we want to go through the roll call vote motion, that I heard that it was a passed 4-0 with one recusal, which was Mayor Ladwig.
I think
are you recommending we do a roll call?
Yes.
Why don't we go ahead and do a roll call if you don't mind, just to make sure the record is clear.
We'll start with, so we're going back to discussion item number 2 to adopt the ordinance, and which was waived, the full reading was waived and read by title only. So we'll start with Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Grover?
Aye.
Tuttle?
Aye.
And West?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Okay. Right now we'll move back to item number 3, and I think we've done everything. We asked everybody to make any information they have. So let's go to somebody willing to make a
Motion.
Thank you. Motion.
I can start this. I will move to approve, or I'll make a motion regarding resolution 2022-10, calling for an election to increase the first occupancy tax rate from 8 to 12%.
Do we have a second?
May I interject for a moment? I'm not sure I heard, but was that motion including all the typographical errors, the grammatical errors be corrected as discussed earlier?
Yes, so that motion was to approve, Eric had said, with the inclusion of the correction of typography.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. We've got a first and a second. And we should do, we want a roll call vote on this one too. So please, Dave.
Okay, so we got a first by Councilmember Kelly, seconded by Grover, and we'll go straight to the roll call. Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Grover.
Aye.
Tuttle.
Aye.
And West.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Okay. Thank you very much for helping us out.
And
And
that's it for me too, I think.
okay. All right, David. Thank you.
Thanks. And give Steve my regards. He can sit back now.
everything. We're going to now have a continuing discussion and presentation regarding the 2022-2023 budget. And we also get Mayor Ladley back.
Woohoo. Thank you very much for taking over.
Well, thank you for letting somebody else make a motion. So
That's what it took.
I took that.
Give you the gavel. All right, so let me bring up budget. At this point, I believe we will turn it over to our fabulous city staff for a budget presentation or continued budget discussion. So Eli and or Gabe, please take it away.
Okay, I'll just start a little bit. So we like you said, it is continued. We started at the last meeting talking about the budget, and then at this meeting, we're going to delve into some of the numbers, and then we'll have a second meeting in June in 2 weeks, where hopefully we can finalize the budget and then approve it. So I'll turn it over to Gabe, and then I can weigh in as needed.
Thank you, Eli. So, of course, I think I bit off a little more than I could chew, getting his hybrid meetings off the ground and then trying to do the budget at the same time. Luckily, we've got Joey here, who made it a little bit easier for me, but it just added a little bit to the stress level. So my goal was to have a draft budget ready today. So I apologize if we've got to take it to the limit at the end of this month. You know, I put a little narrative together, just put some things in words up this afternoon in the packet, which I'll use to kind of keep me focused for the next several minutes. But you wanted to see some numbers too. So I figured that would be the second part of our discussion tonight is looking to see how this process is made. So I started probably, the last 4 weeks, 2 weeks specifically, was sort of a realignment of a lot of expenses that show up in our, what we call this general ledger, which is where all of our invoices get coded to. As you know, we've hired some new folks this year. You know, the work has been delegated. We've spent a lot of money. We've got a lot of invoices coming in for our consultants. And when invoices pass through a lot of hands, you know, I'd say in the past, I had the luxury of being, the one person that did everything. So I had pretty high level of confidence when it came to looking at our profit and loss reports every month, knowing that things were put in the right spot. But we've had a lot of, several inflated line items in our budget that to my eye, when I saw them, I thought, wow, that can't be right. But, a lot of them were right, but I had to do a lot of double checking because that's going to be part of our audit process this year, looking at how well and aligned our budget was. So, I'm sharing my screen right now, so anybody online can kind of follow along, but I'll just make a couple of comments. So at the May 24th meeting, we focused on the city's financial structure and the tools that we manage, that we use to create and manage the budget, how the priorities that the council set in the past and present influence where we are today. I put on here, ideally, the city should be performing tasks that align the budget throughout the year, ensuring invoices are coded correctly, and the city clerk's office, with support of the grant administrator in this town, function as what you call a controller. This past year was a transition period requiring key staff to shift duties and due to the resignation of our water plant operator and public works director in September. Eli spent a lot of time finding and recruiting the water plant operator, and I switched to a real serious kind of human resources role. IT and public works and new employee training. And these adjustments that we've made had to sideline us from a lot of our typical duties. So this has been a real kind of unusual year for us. And we spent the last few weeks reconciling some of the budget numbers that we found. And one of the things I found is that the general fund has kind of remarkably sustained a healthy flow of revenue as anticipated. But it's showing signs of plateauing. So, and I'm guessing that it might occur, and I'm not an economist, but I do pay attention to the news, and I'm kind of thinking that what we're seeing is going to plateau in October and December of this year. And I think this is what I'm kind of getting to, is what Mayor Ladwood wanted to see, what was sort of our sustainability for the next couple of years at this sort of staffing level that we proposed at the last meeting, which is to include some new folks, including somebody that's going to take on, perhaps someday take the reins for the grant administrator position. Let's see. So occupancy tax will fall short of the June 30 expectations this year due to our tax rate issue and also non-issuance of several vacant permits. We've got 4 or 5, I think, maybe now, permits that we're just kind of sitting on, and those mean money. And if we don't issue them, that means, that there's not a revenue coming in, but it also means that there's less rentals on the market, which is also kind of sort of Trinidad's mission. But Verizon is plans to be completely off Trinidad Head by July, I guess. Do we have an exact date?
No, not an exact date. They're doing some studies regarding the birds up there. So as long as they're not nesting in those trees right around there, then they'll be able to start the commission.
So I don't know what that means for our rent payments, but I'm not planning for any revenue this year from Verizon. For many years it was around, $2,000 a month. But then of course, during the holdover period, we were really raking it in to the tune of $6,500 a month. It's now down to $4,500 a month because the co-locating carriers, AT&T and Sprint, have long gone. So I don't know where we're going to go with this, but I'm not budgeting any revenue from Verizon from July forward. Interest earnings have declined considerably. For the last few years, we've had some banner years in interest, to $25,000, $30,000 of the city's revenue comes. So I'm expecting half of that maybe this year. And we're still not sure when the county auditor will release the city's property tax payments. We still don't have those. And my understanding that there's been an issue or a lawsuit filed by the city of Eureka against the county auditor's office to have that money released. We're not really in a bind right now without that, but it's very unusual to be sitting in June and not having any property tax payments, which is roughly our third biggest revenue source.
That's in the neighborhood of about
$120,000. Yeah. Okay. Sales tax is showing good signs of yet another banner year at the close of 2022 on June 30th.
I'm sorry to do this, but when you said that the interest earnings are down, is that because we're drawing on so much of our savings for the water plant? And so
two things. One, we've got quite a bit of money out right now of our savings in place, which is the state investment agency. And they're pros. They know what they're doing. And they seem to somehow weather the storm when it comes to interest. They're so diversified in terms of their investment portfolio that oftentimes the county treasury is usually kind of underperforming late. They're pretty good over there too at the collector's office, but so that's it. We've got a lot of money drawn out, but which could be a good thing too, because we're not losing as much.
Right.
But we're going to put it back in here pretty soon, probably in the next 6 months.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We already put some back.
And we put some back. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then, kind of moving on to sales tax. I'm seeing a banner year in sales tax just this year alone. We're probably going to receive another 20 or 30% more than what we had budgeted for last year, which we always under budget sales tax. But, the cost of goods has gone up incredibly. So sales tax makes perfect sense, right? So you're making a lot of sales tax. But I'm expecting that spending at some point is going to hit the wall. People are just going to say, well, especially if gas prices keep climbing. Come fall, when we get back to our kind of, fall, winter, when it's just kind of the locals kind of feeding the economy here, I think that, we might see a couple of notes here. What we've learned from 2021-22, losing a long line of institutional knowledge can be very expensive. with the result of Brian. Price tag of losing a water plant public works director combo is forced us to have to reflect on many things. Cost of operating a small water system into the importance of maintaining healthy reserves and staff redundancy. So, and the second thing is due to requests made by the Rancheria, of course, to receive water, the drought conditions, the water plant director and support staff resignations, that was our guy Mark, and the demands made by the greater Trinidad area for us to look inward and focus on our small water system. Our budget priorities last year were to focus on water. We didn't try to like go tackle, everything we possibly could, because we knew we had a lot of stuff going on. So we focused on water. That attention, this is kind of my assessment of this, that attention requiring us to nurse this system on all fronts turned out to be very expensive. We've got several engineering firms looking at the water system. We've got our interim plant operators who are pricey. Eli has taken on the role of doing water plant director jobs in terms of kind of facilitating and coordinating communications now, which we didn't really have that issue in the past. I've taken on public works director roles, and even spent a lot of time, working within the city's water system, answering questions of things that Brian, is no longer around, Gabe might know. So we've all sort of turned our attention to this water system, which has totally elevated the expense related, all across the board for us. So, our water system now is a really expensive monster to operate and to take care of. So that's something that I think is going to carry into next year as well, until we can get things ironed out, get our plant back to us, and build that with that knowledge base. So that this system is going to be a little bit more expensive from here forward, which we'll talk about in a few minutes when we get to the waterfront. And then technology. Now we're increasing our demands on technology. We've got this stuff here that you see before us. We've got Joey here right now, who's totally affordable. But, he's my go-to. And then I've got to pick up the ball where I've got to learn this stuff. Anton's got to learn this stuff. Jennifer's got to learn this stuff. So as you can see, the spaghetti on the floor is just continuing to grow. And, but, it's not just us, it's every layer of government now has converted to this sort of central tech focused system. So all these things require people. One person can't do it all. It requires a larger staff. And that's kind of what I'm seeing is the direction that we're going. So, the price of doing business is increasing, and the flip side of 2021-22 will be not only maintaining a focus on developing and retaining staff, but also to optimize the revenue sources that keep our expenses in check. So we've got to now really kind of turn inward. Everything from our water rates. Hopefully, we'll get to a water rate analysis this year, but we've also got to look at just all of our revenue sources and trying to find a way to have a big staff, but have a bigger staff to accomplish all these missions, but also to get too carried away because we want to be sustainable. So I think staff development is a big priority, a big recommendation that we want to keep carrying out the city's objectives. So this is the 2022-2023 move. Everything from maintaining our assets to maximizing grant funding opportunities to supplement capital improvements. That's huge. That's what Becky's doing right now. And that's what hopefully her replacement, I hate to say that, but she doesn't want to, she's not going to stick around forever, but we need to find somebody that can kind of learn the ropes before she decides to pull the plug. So over the last few years, the city has been able to add general fund reserves. We've been building our reserves because we haven't been spending as much, because we haven't had either the staff or we're just, we've been building, and the revenues are coming in a little bit more robustly over the last several years because we've had all this injection of revenue into the economy. So, we are lucky enough, and we have to look at the last 3 years to really be able to see kind of the sustainable picture going forward. I'm thinking just my assessments of everything, talking to the auditor, the city has has piled approximately, $300,000 over the last 3.5 years. Just kind of based on underspending. I think we thought we were going to spend more. We wanted to do more. We wanted to paint the town hall. We wanted to work on our trails. We wanted to, hire a swap crew to really help us doll up, some area of town. But we just didn't get around to doing this stuff because we started dwindling our staff and burning out the staff. So we're in this transition period. And, that's kind of where we're at. And then the water fund, switching to the water fund real fast. The fund is running a structural deficit relative to the cost of keeping the lights on and running the system and the cost of employing people to deliver that water. But as you know, we've got this extraordinary capital improvement grant source. So, on one hand, it's really exciting, but on the other hand, it's like, well, we got to address this day-to-day deficit. We got a study done, I think, by the University of North Carolina about 3 or 4 years ago, and they pretty much said, with what you guys need to do with your capital, improvement fund, with what you guys are doing currently on a day-to-day basis, you're losing $15,000 to $20,000. That just continues until we can figure out what our rate analysis tells us. Can't really tell us what the rate analysis can't give us our results until we have a good idea on what our staffing situation looks like. So we've been in a little bit of a holdover period. And that's kind of, again, coming back to this whole process this year has been a real transition period for the city of Trinidad, more than I can ever remember. So as I say here, as much as staff would like to recommend an ambitious outlook to provide the city with new and improved services, I think that we should really focus and continue on restructuring and optimizing our current business. Discretionary spending is totally on the table. Now, I'm going to dive into that in just a second, but that's kind of, this year was water. I think this next coming year is still going to be water. But as far as anything else goes, I think just developing a new staff, getting everyone some experience, figuring out where everything is going to land in terms of, are we going to be able to keep a chief water plant operator or are we not? Is this just a short-term thing, or are we really is this going to be in for the long haul? Can we take these employees on from Coleman? Can we develop a strong public works director that can really kind of lead, places where Eli are having to kind of drop what we're doing and fill those roles? Can we get somebody that can really help the city meet its objectives in the future? I think that would be my thoughts on what a good focus would be for the summer. So again, summarizing the progress towards the approval of the draft budget by the 28th. That's kind of what I just did. I'm going to open up some spreadsheets here and show you some numbers. Let's see. Explain some of the tools used to craft the budget. That's what I'm going to second, and review the water fund preliminarily. And then here, maybe what you guys have as far as guidance goes. So instead of having this pretty budget here, I could just show you and look at it. I figured I would just let you kind of dive into my head for the last couple. Because we've added, I think, this is what we call a payroll apportionment. You can't read this, and I don't expect you to. But this is the chart that we use to identify staff, and this list over here on the left kind of shows you a list of our employees: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. In the past, we've had 7. So we've grown this by 5. A lot of them are part-timers. So, it's not as exciting as it looks. But it's still, every person that you hire is somebody you have to train. You have to babysit, you have to watch, you have to really kind of invest your time in to make sure that they, did a good job for it. And then there's also associated costs relative to that. But this is what we call the payroll apportionment section of the budget, and it gives us kind of a printout, I guess, towards the far side here of this area. Oops. It kind of spells out the cost of each employee to the city based on every little detail, and then spits it out at the very bottom here in a number. That number down here, is carried through, which is kind of clunky because I'm showing you presentation in a window because that's another computer over there. But and we're learning the bugs on this. But each employee has an apportionment of its salary given to each budget category: the general fund, water fund, cemetery. So we're not all I'm not just all getting paid by sales tax dollars. I'm getting paid a little bit of water fund money, a little bit of cemetery sales, a little bit of different revenue sources. And that goes for every employee here, with the exception, I think, of the water fund, 100%. And in this spreadsheet, there's several spreadsheets. And this is what we call the general fund administration budget. This has people, staff members, consultants included in it. As you can see, the attorney's budget is in here. This is a line item in this budget that's unique. City engineer is not in here because we moved them over to what we call a public works budget. The city planner's salary is in here. The columns that you're looking at right now show actual through April 30th, our 2022 budget, and then what we're anticipating for 2023. All these numbers at the top here in this sage color are basically the apportionment of the payroll chart that I showed you carried over to the admin part of the budget. So this admin, general fund admin, means that your sales tax, your occupancy tax, your property taxes are funneled through this fund and paying for everything you see here. Everything from building inspector to the accountant to the auditor, and then down to what we spent on our TOT allocations. So we budgeted a certain amount of money this last year. The revenue came in short because we budgeted 10% of that money going to all of the community groups in town. But we came up short last year. We didn't make $150,000 like we thought. We actually ended up with an audited figure of approximately $99,000. So we only are paying out $99,000. That's going to change this upcoming year. It's going to be a little lower. I'm budgeting about $120,000 in revenue, as opposed to what I think Ms. Roebuck put in her proposal this year. Had that 12% been in tax, it would mean about a $65,000 increase. So I'm kind of throwing, just giving you a quick preview of what you're seeing right now, because this is what you're going to be getting from me. And you're going to have a little over a week, maybe longer, to look at. Because Eli and I have been really diving into these numbers to look to see how the city's going to fare and what our opinion is the city's going to fare. And then I'll also give you a summary. But this is sort of like they say, making sausage. Yeah. It's not the prettiest process, but these are the tools that we use to identify, where we're at, where we're going, and what we anticipate for next year. There's a couple of other funds. There's so 201 is the general fund administration budget. That's what they call it. This is our police budget. Right. This is our fire department budget. This is what our public works budget looks like. And we've got COPS funds, integrated waste management, which is basically the budget that we've created based on the franchise fees that we receive from Humboldt Sanitation that go back out towards sanitation related efforts, which generally are public works employees because they empty the garbage, all the pet waste bags that we purchase that go around town in the little pet waste stations. This is sort of like a focused special category that we have. We've got our water fund, large budget here showing our revenues, where they come in at the top. This is revenues budgeted for in 2022, actual through April 30th. And then I think my budget here is probably about 85. Ready for you guys to look at in depth. Haven't really showed you many numbers yet. So I'm hoping that in the next probably Wednesday, I'll email this out to the council and you guys can kind of thumb through it, pick through it and look through the categories. All of these categories are in every financial statement that's provided to you every council meeting. All the line items on the left and the account numbers are aligned. So you've had an opportunity to see this as we've gone along. I have placed a few numbers as projections in some of these categories in the middle, which is actual numbers. I've been able to, I have a crystal ball where I can see what's coming. So I'm able to be able to forecast what's happening on the right column, which is what we're going to call the 2023 budget numbers. And you'll be seeing all these different descriptors. So in each one of these categories, I'll send you the digital copies too, so you can really dive into this if you like. But everywhere there's a red tag, you'll be able to see my thoughts. I mean, if you want to look at it through this step, I don't have to. You don't have to either. But you'll be able to see some of our notes to each one of these funds, including, down here, there's little notes that may mean something to you, maybe not. But at least you'll have something to base more questions on. Cemetery budget, and then we've got a few others. But I guess one last thing. Trying to put together what looks like to be a summary. So without getting into too much incredible detail right at this moment, I'll let you guys. But at this point in time, I'm looking at, and you'll get this page from me too, is our 2023 revenues versus the expenses from each one of the funds and the total bottom line. And you'll be able to kind of put that into perspective as to what I just explained about how we've been packing money away for the last several years. When I say packing money, it's underspent, really. So a number like $61,000 doesn't necessarily scare me. It might scare somebody who's looking to see how sustainable this can be down the road. But as I mentioned today to Eli and Anton when they were in the room, and they were getting a little nervous that we were getting close to the meeting hour and this thing wasn't set up right yet, the whole hybrid setup. And I said, I'm not worried if Joey's not worried. And Joey wasn't worried. But the same goes for this budget. I would, it's our job as staff to tell you if there's a panic button. And I'm seeing at this point, because of this transition that I explained, because of how we're still feeling out this labor market. I mean, we couldn't just people weren't jumping in here to get a job. We had to really scratch and pull to get people to work with us. I would be a little more nervous. I was a little more nervous 6 months ago than I am now. Although I think this is going to, be a transitional period, and seeing a balance, and this is a very conservative negative balance is showing $61,000. I think we're actually going to come in even because our sales tax revenues are just don't. At least they're going to probably through the middle of this upcoming year. We're going to get our bed tax thing figured out too. That's really going to help us make some forecasts. And we've got 3 more years of the sales tax increase. Are we in year 1 after the
Yeah. 0.75. Yeah.
And that is also another marching order.
I thought we did 5 years. We did 3. 4.
4 years. It seems like it's every 4 years. So
Okay.
that's another big marching order of ours. It's like every 4 years there's a reckoning.
Yeah.
You know, so if I can see 3 years into the future, I can't really see beyond.
Yeah.
You know, I never really can. So when I'm thinking of sustainable staffing, I'm looking at 3 years. And Becky, of course, at the last meeting, I've got in the packet online, Becky showed us the grant payroll allocation, how much money, all this grant money is going to refund back in and offset staff costs.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really hoping to have something for you to dive into tonight, but the numbers have been kind of overwhelming. Again, it has a lot to do with just line items that are just not fee, like consulting fees for the waterfront, for instance. And I think I may have been, this is Kelly who asked me at the last meeting what a typical day in the water department looks like relative to where we're at right now in terms of staffing. Maybe you asked a question about that, and I think say we dove into the reserves this year about $170,000 of $1 million reserve as a result of this, which could have been worse.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, I would say that that's $175,000. Safe Health's the estimate of what losing Brian costs the city to have to pivot without a wide market of T3 operators. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, this document is about 85% ready to roll. Then I think at the next meeting, and I'll kind of reemphasize this, is that there's some discretionary items, and I really want to I think it's time to turn it over to the council, because you guys represent the voice of the people. If you've heard anything specific that you want beyond what I'm communicating, it's what I'm capable of, tonight would be a great time to share that, so I can weave it into the budget. One last thing on that note, the private security. I can let a little bit more public safety.
Yeah, well, Cheryl had brought Gene from Pacific Coast Security, and we had a meeting with him and just talked to him about supplementing our law enforcement, because we're unable to get dedicated deputies to the city because they have a shortage of deputies. So, you know, there's different scenarios, but personally, at least the way I was looking at it was possibly part-time, like 20 hours a week, just to give some additional presence in the city. Pacific Coast Security has armed and unarmed officers. And basically, it could be around $35 an hour for that. And, you know, we've had like some issues around Saunders Park, you know, in the evenings. And so we can ideally pick like certain days and times that we would like to have, you know, some additional law enforcement presence in the city. So that's one thing. The other thing was actually dealing with the building itself. Dick at Fuselhorse had brought to my attention that a few of the windows that are along that side are rotting. Some of the wood is rotting. And as a result, that would need to be changed. And the estimate I got was probably like around $30,000 in order to do, actually to change most of what we need to change. Otherwise, it could be as high as $60,000 if we want to change all the windows. But anyway, those are two additional things that are discretionary that we can address. And then since Cheryl is involved with Gene with Pacific Coast Security, you might want to add something else regarding that.
Yeah, thank you. I think you covered it well. I think we just we're looking at an opportunity to add to our existing law enforcement to take care of some trouble spot, which is kind of over Saunders Park area, the library, and so forth. And, if you look at the amount that other cities spend on law enforcement and fire, it's bigger cities. They spend up to 70% of their budget on. We're fortunate that we get a lot of our services from the county. So as a small town, we don't need to spend that high a percentage, but our percentage right now, I think this past year is roughly 10 to 13%. So I think we could probably spend a little bit more, but yeah, I think that it would be really appreciated by the folks that are volunteering.
So yeah, so those are a couple of things that we can bring you a little more exact numbers next time that we can consider as part of the budget.
Also, can I share some of that real quick, just while
Sure.
we're talking about it, so that we can, kind of maybe land on that tonight? The city receives approximately $150,000 or anticipated receiving $150,000 in COPS funding, which money that comes down from the federal government through the auditor's office. Right now, as of today, we received about 138,000. I've had a little bit of a, shaky confidence level and knowing everything that's coming, what we're still to be expected, but I'm hoping that we receive the full benefit of that 150,000. It does fluctuate from year to year, but our current sheriff's contract that we just, is that the one that gets effective July 1st this year?
Yeah.
So the 150,000, their contract with the city is 147,000. So COPS funding, no general funds, no tax dollars are being put towards at this time, city tax dollars, not tax dollars, go towards law enforcement. So we're really fortunate for that. So in our budget, which I think it's really small to see it, but what I've done up here is made some notes in terms of what that means. But so what we're showing is 155,000 anticipated. We received 138,000. I'm budgeting next year for 150. It's an educated guess. We have actually spent as of today 127,000 on law enforcement. We're anticipated to spend another 61,000 this year. And that'll take us just a little bit over our budget, but the bottom line is that we're not expected next year to spend, maybe even have a few $1,000s in the bank. So I think in the the way it works is that once we spend all the COPS money, we roll over to this budget called the general fund police budget. And I've anticipated with this line right here as a discretionary expense in alternative private security personnel as per city manager. So there's a little note in this budget that can be that number, be about $32,000. And as you mentioned, 10% is not that much spending. That would be the dollars. Sure.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments from the council, including Jack up on the screen. I think Jack is still with us. Any questions, comments for Gabe or Eli?
Yeah, it's just really important.
Yeah.
Just a lot in that. I really appreciate that opening part where you're able to see what some of the ideas you have. I'm impressed and very, somewhat concerned. I'm glad that you're making me feel better about it. So that's good. But I also think there's a lot of other things that, like you talked about, this building itself, not just the windows, but there's a lot I think that really needs to be done to make the city look a little nicer. So I think that's something we'd like to see somehow included in the budget, including being able to fix the whole front of this, make it just a big attraction. Trinidad, and I think we should be looking at areas of Trinidad that maybe we could help if possible, improve to. So when visitors come, they're so impressed with the city of Trinidad, as well as just the beauty. So some of that take place. I know that's going to be tough. Glad to hear you're looking at things and trying to keep up on.
Yeah, in our public works budget here, one of the, we can see, so this is Public Works Fund 501. Some of these green highlights are discretionary. And I say discretionary because here's $10,000, what we call a swap or CCCs, the Conservation Corps. If we get really behind, we've got some money reserved to where we can access some big help real quick. We didn't utilize that money last year, so it's still sitting in the bank. $10,000 here for Trails Committee priorities as per our annual Trails Committee report, still sitting in the bank. And you can see this big blank right here. We haven't spent that money. And then Jack, to your point right here, the $14,000, this is under a category called building repairs and maintenance. We budgeted $14,000 this year. We've only spent $4,373. 1,300 of that was for sort of a deposit for the Tesla Powerwall. So very little has gone into public building maintenance in this year and actually in the prior years. So I kept a line item in here of $14,000. It was a carryover from last year. Eli mentioned town hall windows. There's still the $10,000 for the club room renovations, which the council committed last year to kind of continue on until some money's invested in that. But I'll make sure I add another note for that, maybe facade. I think that's really where having a good, strong public works director, somebody who has some experience, which now we're kind of reorganizing, we're splitting the water from the public works a little bit. Having somebody that can lead these projects for us, somebody that can get the ball rolling, calling some contractors, getting some bids, maybe even working with Becky on some of our contract processes. We can't just go hire somebody for $50,000. We have to do it by the books. So investing in staff is going to even help us get to that next level, hopefully quicker. Hopefully get something.
Joe, looked like you were.
No, I guess it was, and the shortfall in budget is not huge percentage wise. Last year, I think we thought we had a positive balance going into the year of like 51,000. This year we're saying we're like 1,600. So that is a little bit bigger delta, but I hear you that it may not. I guess at some point we can talk about other ways that we can make up the shortfall. Revenue generating possibilities, because we talked about how we can add discretionary spend, but maybe there's some other options there.
And we have in the past had a mid-year budget discussion where we have a better sense after some, the summer TOTs to know where we're really sitting. So we've done that in the past too, to a mid-year discussion to see if that 60,000 is going to be what. I wanted to really impress upon the council the value of Becky, not only as an individual who's a very successful grant administrator, but the position itself, to invest in that position. We wouldn't be able to do anything in this city that we're either mandated to or that we want to do without a very effective grant administrator. So I really want to impress upon all of us to put our feelers out there to find someone to work full time as it is. Now I'm having to say it publicly, Becky's replacement. That's a very difficult thing to say, but it's a reality. And we have a little bit of money in our reserves if need be, but our staffing really we have to benefit from Becky's knowledge. And waiting until she retires to replace the grant administrator is not, in my opinion, is not sound business in any way, shape, or form. So I really want to encourage whatever budget planning we do that we continue to invest in the staff needed to make the city run. Because we have seen the benefits. I personally have felt it as a as a vacation rental owner to feel the benefit of having a dedicated, a Jennifer to dedicate time to that process. It's never been smoother. And I can say this throughout the whole city. So I really want to encourage us to consider to maintain investing. And I really appreciate your context, Gabe, that really we have 3 years do the things that we're doing. And that helps me because that's how long that 75% or 0.75% rather tax continues. And that's a good framework for us to think, because if we think too far, it gets a little bit squishy. So I just wanted to make sure that we're really, I want to say publicly how much we have benefited from having the staff that we have to think in that realm. If we reduce our staffing, then we reduce our effectiveness, and we just need to be able to say that this was a choice. We're not going to have the benefits that we have, save money that way. So we'll get into all the details. 28, is that the day that we're looking at, the 28th?
My goal is to have, I'd like to get you something by the end of next week, so the council, maybe not the entire public.
So we have a chance
to have something to really thumb through, and then, we can field some questions internally, and then we'll put something out in a packet, and then it will be, fully public knowledge of that.
And counselors, do you have a preference for a digital versus a paper, or both? I would love to have both. If we can get a paper version, it helps to reiterate, for me anyway, to have the thing to hold on to. But I also like the digital, so I can look at all your comments. So is that too much of an ask to have a digital?
Not at all.
Okay.
Summary slide?
Yeah.
That's what he was working on right there.
Oh,
Yeah, summary slide. Yeah, sure.
Mr. Tuttle, I just want to make sure that you've got there you are. Any questions, comments? You want to, okay.
No, looks really good. Gabe did an amazing job, and I'd love to dive in this a little bit more with paper copy and digital copy as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Any public comment on our budget process? We outnumber the public with city staff and elected officials about 7-1. So, all right. Well, any closing comments there regarding this budget discussion? Any last minute asks of our highly capable staff to get the 28th up and ready?
Thank you.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I don't know if this means anything, but I'm actually grateful that we don't have all the numbers today, because it helped to have one more of these really high level kind of discussions to not, because I'm distracted by Excel spreadsheets on a screen. So if you were really wanting us to focus on, I would just be looking at the numbers and not hearing what you're saying. So I really appreciate the time here to kind of really get ready for next. So with that, we will move on to our final agenda item for this evening, the general election calendar and upcoming deadlines. I think
Paula has a hand up.
Oh, sorry, Paul, I didn't see the little tiny hand up there. And there you are. What can we do for you?
Sorry, I thought this was the end of the meeting, and I wanted to make a suggestion for the next agenda, but I'll make it at the end of the meeting in a few minutes.
So close. We are so close, Paula Levine. We are so close. So moving back to our general election update, I believe we were expecting a little more information for June. I think, Gabe, you were.
June. What I'm planning on doing is keeping this at the end of our agendas at every meeting moving forward, just so that we can, everybody's aware of what's happening. We don't miss any deadlines. But I was going to add actually some more information. I'd like to add more information for July, but I think with the addition of this agenda item tonight about the resolution for the occupancy tax and ballot measure and the ordinance, we checked those off the list. Those were the biggies for June. July, we're going to, first meeting in July, we're basically going to have where it says candidate nomination period opens. That actually opens in, I think it's mid to late July when the candidate announcement period comes up, and then it remains open for about 5 weeks. So that's what my next announcement will be, at the meeting in July with some concrete dates, basically saying it's time, for the next 5 weeks. Here's, you can pick up a packet at the city office, and here's here's some of your deadlines for July. But we checked off the list today, the two big ones.
The first reading. And
the first reading of the ordinance and then the resolution to make sure that. So that's.
And also the second reading's off the list because they said it's not necessary. Because basically the voters are going to be.
Oh, okay.
Second reading.
That's the second reading.
Right, yeah. So in our July meeting, I think, is that early in July or is it? So it's the 12th of July.
The 12th of July, yeah.
Yes, I think the nomination period for candidates will open the week after that. So at our meeting in July, I'll make the announcement again. 3 seats.
Excellent. So we'll just keep, I like that this is now a standing item. It's the last agenda item. So, yeah.
That's for sure.
All right. Thank you for that update. I doubt there's any public comment, but anyone have any? All right. Then now is future agenda items. Paula, your hand was up, so I'll go to you first. I believe you were on mute. So close.
I have a request for the city manager, and I also have 2 requests for 2 action agenda items. First, for Eli, I request that he do a water cost analysis comparing Luffenholz development to Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. The Luffenholz development will include the cost of a Tier 3 employee, water treatment, chemicals, and so on and so forth, compared to what it would cost for water from Humboldt Bay. For action agenda items, I request that the City Council connect with Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District to collect data on the cost of water and a potential hookup. Part of this is time sensitive. If we eventually need to hook up to Humboldt Bay, the cost of water to Trinidad is influenced by the size of the pipe to the Rancheria, which is currently being engineered. The second action agenda item is for someone to do some research on a comparative study of the fire resiliency between the projected Luffenholz development compared to hooking up to Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. And I believe the new member of the Water Advisory Council, Hankinen, correct me if I'm mistaken, was a firefighter. So he may be able to help with that. We need to do a deep dive into the data collection of costs of water alternatives to evaluate water rates going into the future. And, I forgot to mention, before I said all this, it would have been nice to have done all this 2 years ago. It would have made us better prepared to make the decisions that the city council made, but it's not too late. And I think it's important to do it now. to get a realistic appraisal. There was all this sound bites going on of this would cost that and this would, and so on and so forth. And we need to get some facts. We need to calm, and we're all calmed down now, but we need to, it's clear what I've requested. I don't need to reiterate.
Thank you for your
Is it clear? Did you get the message?
Got the message. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
We need a general plan element for consideration. I've lost track. I know we've done 3, maybe 4. So whatever the next element that is ready. I don't know if you were at the planning commission meeting.
I was, and I was going to bring this up as well.
Okay.
And it didn't, I think I mentioned it there, but there wasn't I didn't get a takeaway when the timeline was.
Okay.
So,
Trevor, the last time Trevor was at a meeting, she mentioned that she was close, but then it's been 3 meetings and we've been focusing a lot on budget. So we kind of tabled it for a minute. So if we could.
I think there's one on their agenda for tomorrow night.
Excellent.
Circulation.
Excellent. So.
I think the mission and vision for the first part was done a while ago.
Oh yeah, that's
I
done.
said to the council yet? Maybe.
I remember doing it, but
Do you?
I don't trust my memory.
Which one?
I don't remember.
The mission of basically
Yeah,
the
the
intro.
general plan, mission and vision, the first, section, the introduction, basically. Try to get that to the council. I remember that Trevor was able to do that.
It sounds like circulation at least is on the docket for tomorrow. And anyway, whatever is ready, something I would really like to see something ready for July, because we had a good head of steam with reviewing elements, and then the water plant and a lot of other things came up. So if we could get that back, that would be great. Did you have any other?
No, that was fine.
Okay. Jack, do you have anything that you want to bring to the council for discussion? Sorry, Mr. Tuttle, I got to focus on Jack's.
No, I don't today. Thank you.
My Jack to the left.
Nope. Neither Jack. No.
Either Jack. Any other, Gabe?
While Joey and I are here, and I guess we have the whole staff in the room. And this is kind of a question to Jack Tuttle too. Does anybody have any feedback to share? Like, is there any part of especially Zoom participants, hard for you to hear us? Is there any sound or visual issues on your end that you could share with us that we could work on for the next time? Or even feedback from
For what it's worth, rather, as a facilitator of the meeting, I found it to be incredibly useful to be able to do this back and forth and out in the crowd. So,
For me, I heard everyone pretty well except for Cheryl. I think her microphone was pointed the other direction and she was facing you guys. That was the only correction.
Microphone, close enough probably. Thanks for the feedback.
he can't hear you. So
Yeah, thanks for the feedback.
it's true. We've always had these microphone issues where people forget that it's really for the recording, right? And it's also for the Zoom link. Paula, did you have some feedback on the quality of the meetings? Were you able to hear us?
Yeah, it was fine. Did any members of the public actually go to the civic building?
Yeah, we're packed. We have 3 members of the public. I'll be honest, summer is usually low enrollment, or low attendance rather for council meetings. So the budget's doesn't draw as many people in, even though it's really a critical piece. It just doesn't draw the same attendance that other items do.
Well, it's a
All right,
little
so-
bit easier
Go
to,
ahead.
excuse me?
Go ahead.
It's a little bit easier to hear you and certainly to see you when it was just all video, because your head is about a 1/4 inch high.
I've been called a pinhead before, but whatever, that's fine. I want to try to, I can't believe I'm saying this. I really want to encourage everyone to come to town hall, right? I mean, it's what we're here for, but I'm glad that we have the option for folks that want to stay home. And thank you very much, Joey and Gabe and Anton and Jennifer and Eli for taking a test run with this and making it work. It's quite impressive, this little array of yeah. Well, at one point we were talking about a proposal rather of $17,000, $18,000. We came in for under a G on that. So I think, yeah, really want to commend you. With that,
Oh, wait.
I've been waiting 2.5 years to beat this thing on the table.
Yeah. Well, so we can always have recommendations for future agenda items, but ideally, the council would give direction as to what to pursue and so on and so forth. And as you could tell, we're working on the budget and everything else, and I'm working on the water plan, trying to make that transition. Those things are taking up a lot of time overall for staff. So what I'm getting at is with this Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, we have considered it in the past. Council has decided to have it tabled for 3 to 5 years to wait until the Trinidad Rancheria hopefully has a line up here. The study that was done indicated that the line that was planned for the Trinidad Rancheria would provide more than enough water to what the city needs. So therefore, we don't have to determine the size of the pipe anymore. So therefore, I think that this part, we shouldn't be wasting our resources on this, just keep moving with what we have to do with the water plant, what we have to do with the watershed itself. And then also, we can seek whatever funding we need when that day comes when the water is available up in our area with the rancheria. And we had indicated 3 to 5 years, so we can revisit it at that time. So at least that's my suggestion.
Agreed.
I mean, if in our travels we could figure out whether or not the water tank replacement would be necessary in either case, because that was one of the things when we did the water advisory, we did the report, I did the water short report. I didn't know the answer to that question. So, but that could be something rather than a special report that's part of what we're doing.
Yeah, and we don't want to get into discussion of the agenda item, but definitely hear what you're saying, Eli, and we will always take input from folks as we, just to remind folks that Jack and Eli and myself meet every Monday to kind of discuss the direction that we're going and whatnot. So we'll take any input on the agenda for sure. So with that, adjourn. Yes.